Problem 2, proof using the vertical angles theorem. So we're given that angle 1 is congruent to angle 4 in this diagram. We're asked to prove that angle 2 is congruent to angle 3. So what we see here is a 2-column proof setup with statements being on the left, reasons justifying those statements on the right. And as always, we begin with the given information. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 4. That was given to us. And then we want to establish what I like to think of as our stepping stones to lead us closer and closer to the point where we can state that angle 2 is congruent to angle 3. So we've shown that angle 1, or we were given that angle 1 is congruent to angle 4. So I'm going to mark those with one arc, meaning they're congruent to each other. The next statement in this particular route to the proof states that angle 4 is congruent to angle 2. So we can now state that angle 2 and 4 are congruent because vertical angles are congruent. We could have chosen to show that angle 1 and angle 3 are congruent by the same vertical angles are congruent reason. The order doesn't really matter. You can see the next thing done, though, is to state that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. And that's by the transitive property of congruence. And maybe that's easier to see if we write it out this way. We knew that angle 1 was congruent to angle 4. Angle 1 congruent to angle 4. There we go. And then we stated that angle 4 is congruent to angle 2. And remember, the transitive property is the one that I always talk about as leaving out the middleman. Because we know that 1's congruent to 4 and 4 is congruent to 2, we can just state that 1 is congruent to 2. The transitive property of congruence. Then, stating that angle 1 is congruent to angle 3, again using the vertical angles are congruent reason. Now we've shown enough to state that angle 2 is congruent to angle 3, using a very similar transitive property of congruence. Okay, your got it question. A says use the vertical angles theorem to prove the following. We're told, or we're given, that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, and we're asked to prove that all 4 of these angles, 1, 2, 3, and 4, are congruent.